Today on Inspired Money.
We take a test drive. It's lovely. We get back to the car dealer and all of a sudden, we quickly start talking prices and finance charges and all that. And I just noticed that I'm starting to hyperventilate. And now that may seem silly. I've been a financial therapist for years, so I shouldn't have any emotions, right? But I don't believe that. I don't believe that our emotions go away. I believe that we can learn how to work with them, catch them quicker, learn how to sit with them, feel them, learn how to be with them so that they don't overwhelm us.
This is episode 60 with financial therapist and creator of The Art of Money, Bari Tessler. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. This show is different from other personal finance podcasts because we don't want to just learn how to live with money. We want to get inspired to live a richer life, make a greater impact, and together, make the world a better place. I appreciate you joining me on this mission. Today, we're talking to financial therapist Bari Tessler. John Vroman, our guest from Inspired Money episode 33, entitled Transform Your Life with the Art of Moment Making, he introduced me to Bari and suggested she come onto the show. What's your relationship with money? Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Maybe it's been both. Money stories and your relationship that you have with money are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Bari has guided thousands of people, individuals, couples, and creative entrepreneurs into new, refreshing, honest relationships with money. As her business has evolved, she's worked with clients one-on-one, in small groups, or most recently, in a year-long money course called The Art of Money. In this episode, you'll learn Bari's unique path from dancer to bookkeeper to financial therapist, what she's learned as an entrepreneur with changing business models over the last 18 years, what a body check-in is, and why it might help you make better financial decisions. Now let's get inspired with Bari Tessler. Bari, thank you for joining me on Inspired Money. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you wrote about this in your book, and it's the question that I start just about every Inspired Money episode with. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
For some reason, my earliest one, when I did this exercise, I somehow jumped to 15, even though there was a lot of experiences earlier on. But this one was formative and shaped a lot, and it was my father sending me out over a weekend to apply to as many jobs as I could. I think there was a requirement. I can't remember if it was 5 or 6, and I had to come home and report back how they went, and he wanted me working at 15. And so it's connected to money, right? Because then in that moment, there was no training or lessons on how do you go on a job interview, how do you apply, do you even search for something that you enjoy, interested in, think you're good at, or do you just do anything to make money? And then did I get to keep the money, or did I have to give it to my family? And there was no discussion around any of that. And I was terrified to go out, and I really didn't know what I was good at or what I wanted to do. But my father was teaching me a lot of lessons, which I now have respect for, which I did not at the time. And one of them was some tough love, and you just push through the hard stuff, and you just get out there. I'm kind of the opposite of that in my teaching, but that was a significant one for me, was just pushing through. And it shaped me in a lot because I hated it so much, and it was so scary for me that it took me a while to understand what I was good at, what my work was going to be. Could it be in alignment with my values? Could I create a livelihood based on something that I loved, my passion, and so on. So am I explaining this moment to you? Am I giving, I got a job, and I think it was scooping ice cream. That was one of my very first jobs. And then from there, I went on to retail. And I was able to keep the money, but there were no lessons on how to use it or what I could use it for. Except that I just got to keep it instead of it having to go to the family. But there was a lot in there about what I learned from my father that I rebelled against and then had to find my own way. So my father was always my main sparring partner, verbally, an instigator, where who he was, I felt I was the opposite of, even though we're very similar too. And a lot of my life was shaped in response and reaction with my father.
It's funny that when it comes to money, I think you and I will agree that people generally don't speak enough about this subject. If we're lucky, we're fortunate to learn by example from our parents or have some mentor that we can look up to. From reading your book, I get the sense that it's just this great puzzle. It's like you get some information here, you get some information there, but rarely do you get the full gamut. This is how you should handle your money. This is what you need to do. You're a financial therapist. Who are you trying to help?
What I have seen is, yes, we aren't given a full financial education from grade school and up in small increments, which would be so nice, from in school, from our family. And my community is 25 to 75 years old. That's a large age range. And I love when parents start to teach this to their children, young adults, teenagers. My son is almost 10. I've been trying to teach him in age-appropriate ways. But yes, as I looked back on my journey, as I help others, it is as though it's a puzzle that we're getting the pieces and parts, and it's something that is unknown to us, and we're trying to understand and figure out. And some of us did learn from our parents some practical things on how to have a really healthy relationship to money. Many families did not talk about money, or they talked about money behind the scenes or yelling behind the scenes, or said, you're not allowed to talk about this outside of our family. There's just been so much taboo and secrecy, and that's been changing for so long. Yes, in my work as the 25 to 75-year-olds, we are looking back and we're uncovering different parts and pieces on a practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level of what were our strengths around money, what are they, what were our challenges around money, what did we have to overcome. And I've just been surprised over and over, and I'm not anymore, but, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to teach in groups early on. And I started out teaching in tiny groups of 10 people over and over, and then I moved to 20-person groups, and then 50, and now in my year-long program we have over 500, but I always wanted to teach in groups, even if they were small, because I wanted us all to come together from all different economic backgrounds, lineage backgrounds, class backgrounds, get in the same room and share our experiences and share our biases and share our beliefs, and have those changed and shifted, and realize that we really do all have strengths and we all had challenges. And the person from the wealthy family, they have their strengths and they have their gifts, but they also had their challenges and things that they had to overcome as well. So for many of us, we don't have the full picture early on, and we're learning it as adults, and it takes time and it takes baby steps, and it's something we'll be fine-tuning until the day that we die.
I understand that you grew up dancing and thinking that money was too unspiritual for a creative like you. What events took place in your life that took you from then to where you are now?
So I grew up middle class in Chicago, and I grew up with entrepreneurs. But even in that world, there wasn't direct teachings around money. My father didn't sit me down and talk with me about investments or real estate. I think he did with my younger brother, who's almost 6 years younger than me, but not me. I was steeped in that, so I got to see the excitement of it, the passion of it, and also the anxiety of being an entrepreneur. So I grew up dancing, and so one of my first thoughts about career was, I'm going to be a solid gold dancer. And I knew that wasn't really real, but that was like my first thought. I'm going to grow up and be a solid gold dancer. My second thought was, writing that 7th grade career paper. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I didn't know what kind of businesswoman, and the only reason I even chose that was because my father was a businessman, And I don't speak about my mother that much in the book, even though I can say so much more about her relationship to money, and I need to write about that more. But my mom was more behind the scenes. She helped run the entire business. She did their bookkeeping. I didn't even know that she did their QuickBooks bookkeeping for years, and that my grandmother also was a bookkeeper. Somehow I did not even know this until I started learning bookkeeping. So, solid gold answer, number 1. Number 2, businesswoman. Number 3 is I asked my family if I could go to therapy when I was a teenager. It was unusual, but I wanted to understand myself better. And I was very intrigued by psychology and therapy. And I took a year off after college. I went to Madison, University of Wisconsin. I was studying history and women's studies and Jewish history. Because I'm Jewish, I was studying African American history. I was taking Japanese for a few summers in a row because that's what my father wanted. And then I was supposed to go to Japan to teach English. That was my father's big vision. And at the last moment, I said to him, no. And I said, I'm not doing this. This is your dream, your vision, your goals. It's not mine. And I cut ties with him in a way. And it was so important to me. He basically said, it's the worst decision you're ever going to make. And then I chose to go to Israel for a year and live there when I was 23, and I came back. And my father then said that was the best decision you ever made. You have changed so much. You know who you are now. And that's what that year in Israel was. And that's when I realized in Israel that I wanted to integrate my dance with my therapy, and I thought I made up the field, dance therapy, and I did not make up any such field. There was graduate programs in somatic psychology, which is body-centered psychotherapy and dance movement therapy, and I chose to go to graduate school to become a psychotherapist. And in that decade, I trained to be a therapist, all in my 20s. And not only was money somehow not spiritual, and many people around me had a spiritual practice. I was going to a graduate school that was Buddhist-based. They would integrate Eastern and Western teachings and philosophy into the way that we learn how to be therapists. It was very experiential, which was perfect for me after doing traditional schooling, public schools, university. I needed something different, alternative, and this was the best graduate program to become a therapist for me. Not only was money at that time not spiritual, but it also, as a therapist, you weren't supposed to talk about money. You weren't supposed to want money or strive for money. And this all didn't dawn on me until I finished my graduate program at the end of my 20s, and my student loan came due. And all of a sudden, it was like the veil was lifted, and I got to see that I was very scared of my relationship to money because I realized I did not have one. And when my student loan came due, that was my moment where I finally realized that this was the missing topic and the missing education for me. So even in my graduate school program, we talked about everything except for money. And so how was I going to work with couples, and do intimacy work and couples work if I had no training on how to talk about money or how to even know my own money story, let alone when two people come together, they never earn and spend and save and give or invest in the same way. And how was I going to support them? And then I had no clue how to do bookkeeping or start a private practice and do the money around that. And it was such a missing piece for me. And I thought emotional literacy was the main missing piece. And that's why I went to study somatic therapy, because I had such strong feelings growing up and was very sensitive. That's why one of the reasons that makes me a very good therapist, but I also did not know how to work with my feelings and emotions and how to identify what they were and sit with them and work with them instead of them just overwhelming me. So emotional literacy was my main track. And then when my school loan came due, all of a sudden I realized financial literacy was the other significant missing piece in my education. And, I thought I was the only one. I'm like, I'm the only one, with these money issues. And pretty soon I started looking around to my community. And that was the moment, one of the moments where I realized no matter what economic background we come from, because where I was going to graduate school, half of us were taking out student loans to pay for school, and the other half came from a wealthy family where their family paid for, their graduate degree. And we didn't talk about that. The school didn't talk about that. And it just became so clear that, again, people, no matter from what background or lineage or ethnicity or class that we all came from, we weren't talking about money. None of us were. And we all had shame around money, and we all had the strengths and the challenges and things to overcome. And so either I was going to go screaming, running away, becoming a nomad and traveling the world, or I was going to face this. And I chose to face it. And bookkeeping was my first stop. And I learned bookkeeping. And I wound up having a bookkeeping business for a few years for therapists and artists and coaches. And I learned more about them between the ages of 28 to 32 than I probably could have if I was doing therapy with them. And they probably wouldn't have come to me as a therapist at that, because I was 28 to 32 years old, but they threw their bookkeeping at me. They didn't want to have anything to do with it, and they could care less. I didn't even know I had a master's in psychology. And I sat and just studied patterns, spending patterns, income patterns. And then at the age of 32 is when I realized it was time to put all of my training together, all of the deep work that I know how to do as a therapist, and all of these practical skill sets and the language of money and this bookkeeping systems that I fell in love with and really surprised myself, because as a creative person, I never thought I could do that, or I thought money was so boring, and, put it all together into a methodology. But I was at that time struggling with, until I started learning bookkeeping and taking this whole area of life on, that, money was not spiritual. How was I ever going to create a livelihood based on my gifts? Because I was making $11 an hour working in the mental health field as a social worker counselor. And all of that kind of came to a head, and I realized I can't stay in the field of social work and work as a counselor. I need to figure out another track and another path, and I need to figure out how to create good work where I'm serving a community and bringing my gifts and also being paid well. And so I just had to untangle and unravel all of those beliefs and messages, and thinking as a therapist, we just need to do our good work and somehow we'll be compensated. That's not how it goes, unless you're living in an ashram or something. And so it was hours and weeks and years of doing my own internal work around my relationship to money, and then creating this methodology, and then testing it out in these small groups and realizing what was missing or what I forgot or what was working or what was not. And now I'm almost 18 years into teaching this work.
It's really interesting that you were self-reflecting, looking at your own money issues or lack of relationship with money, and then unique that you had this test group of bookkeeping clients that you could also draw from and analyze trends and see patterns of commonality or differences. What were some of the things that you had to face personally as you looked inward?
I was taking time to train to be a therapist in my 20s, and I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making very little money, and it wasn't until 28 when my school loan came due, and at that time I was making $11 an hour, as I said, working in the mental health field. So I had a lot to work around. What does it even mean to do work that you love? And can you really know yourself well, your gifts well, your strengths well, what you're good at, what you suck at? Can you know yourself well enough and then dare to try to create work or find work around that? I never knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. Even though I came from an entrepreneurial family, it took me until the age of 32 to realize I really suck at working for other people. I need to work for myself. Doing bookkeeping, I did have clients. I was running my own business, but it really was at 32 when I realized I have to be my own boss. That's the only one. I haven't looked back, and I'm going to be 50 soon. I had to grapple with being an under-earner. And it's a funny thing, because under-earning doesn't necessarily mean you're making a low amount of money, but $11 an hour, working 40 hours a week, where I could not buy good food, And so it just took me a while to learn how to take my skill set and create this financial therapy work and figure out the right fee structure and business models. And now that I'm, almost 18 years in, I just had to do so much internal work around what I call internal value work, which is, I've mentioned a few things, learning what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, learning how to say no. I did not know how to do that years ago. Healthy boundaries is essential. This is all the inner work around it. And then the external work is, what do you charge and how do you create a business model that honors money, energy, time, and other really big priority values, like for me, family and health. And so I've had 5 different business models over the years. And from day one, I wanted to figure out, at first it was just, how do I move beyond the money ceiling of $11 an hour? My first little accounting job, they paid me $13 an hour, and then they bumped me up to $15. And then a contractor offered to teach me QuickBooks. And he said, I'll pay you $20 to start. And once you learn and get a handle on my books, I'll pay you $25. I was like, what? That was so amazing to me, is to learn how to move through money ceilings. So at the beginning, it was a dollar amount, or it was a certain amount each month that I wanted to see if I could surpass. But then eventually it became, can I learn how to make my income over a 3-month period? So I have enough money for 3 months. I don't have to keep making money each month. Or eventually it became, can I make a year-long salary, with my own business? And my first business model was me working on my own, doing bookkeeping, doing some financial therapy, training people how to use QuickBooks or Quicken. Then I moved into just teaching my groups, and I stopped doing the bookkeeping. I switched over. Then I had a business partner and a team of bookkeeping trainers and financial coaches under our umbrella. Then I had my son, and we had a really big complication in my labor, and I needed to recover for a couple of years. And I let go of my entire team and went back to a one-woman show, which, went completely against the grain. All of my fellow coaches or friends and women that I knew running their online businesses, they just kept going. They had their kids, they had their team kept things going, and I thought I would do the same. And because of the complication, and we're all healthy, and as I said, my son's going to be 10 in a month, we needed time to recover. And I chose to what felt right to me when I was really listening to what is the right move here, is I let go of everyone, went back to a one-woman show, and only worked 10 hours a week for 2 years, and taught my group programs like via telecourse, crazily sleep-deprived, with a bun on my head. No one could see me, and I did the best I could. And then my next move was when I was finally sleeping and my son was sleeping, and I realized it was time to move, it was time to grow again. And I felt, even though when my son came, my income really reduced, and it was a big transition, and we needed to learn how to work with that. And in our field, usually you're supposed to grow every year, earn more, save more, give more. And not all years are like that in a long life. There's ebbs and flows. And I've just learned to trust that, listen to that. Yes, I love the years where I'm growing and earning more and saving and giving more, but I needed to recover.
I love that your approach is very practical, from not just trying to follow this path of doing something that you love, but there is a monetary component there where you have to be realistic and try to figure out, how can you monetize what you love, and that evolves over time. When you went through some of those changes to your business model, was that scary?
The whole thing has been scary and exciting, both, but were there some days where it was only scary and I was crying on the floor? Sure, or where I knew to take myself on a hike, because that's when I go into nature and I ask questions and I just calm down, and I step more into trust. And so I make sure that I have some kind of practice like that daily. And so I hike often, or I have something like that. And yeah, it's been scary. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you are scared a lot. You have to take risks a lot. And it's also thrilling and exciting to me. And you have to push through and you have to be determined. But yeah, are you going to have some days where you feel scared or hopeless? I had a lot more of that at the beginning. And then I just learned that I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find someone to support me. I'm going to find a team. Some years I've had teams that weren't a great fit. I'm now 2.5 years into my current team with my virtual assistant, my online business manager, my co-writer, and it's my most favorite team ever. So, it's a long journey. 18 years of many different business models. So yes, I was scared along the way. So here's one little interesting thing. Each time I made a shift into a new business model is because all of a sudden the previous model wasn't working any longer. And the first shift, I remember I was 3 years in and I was meeting my basic needs, but I felt like I was living in an apple orchard at the time in California. And it felt like someone was eating all the apples off my tree, obviously metaphorically, right? That's what it felt like. I was giving and giving, but I was in that beginning hustle, which you do at the beginning, and networking and meeting people and, saying yes to everything. And I realized, I need to get to this next level. How do I do it? And I decided to just put a board of directors together. I was a sole proprietor, my business entity was sole proprietorship, so I didn't need a board of directors. But I just came up with the idea that I need support. I'm going to ask some elders in my community if they would meet for 6 months with me once a month to help me review my business, talk about it, give me ideas. They all said yes, and they helped me for 6 months. And it was wonderful. And that propelled me to the next level. And all of a sudden, women started coming to me saying, hey, you know what? I'm in corporate accounting, and I also am doing this yoga training on the side. Or, hey, Bari, I'm getting my master's in psychology and doing bookkeeping on the side. Can I be in your team? I didn't have a team, but I just started saying yes. And I realized that I was great at giving these free talks on my methodology. And then people would then say, oh, now I need a bookkeeping trainer. And I would say, oh, great, here's my gal for that. And so each step along the way, I've been scared in moments, really determined in other moments. After I had my son, as I mentioned, that was a big transition, but I had to trust that recovery was priority. And then, my most recent business model is, of course, my favorite, because the newest one is always my favorite. And I'm 6 years in. We're going into our 7th year. And at the time, I was doing a 3-month coaching program, and I got the idea that I needed to do a year-long program. I was ready for it. The community was ready for it. I had matured. The material had matured. I was tired of trying to teach this work in 6-week, 3 months, even 6-month programs. It needed more time, again, because we were not taught this, in grade school and up. And I felt like that year I was like pulling teeth to get 50 people in my program. And then I revamped it all. And then we opened up my year-long program. I already had all the content for it because I had been building it for years. And we opened it up, and over a month, 320 people stepped in to do the very first Art of Money 2013 program.
Wow.
And that was a big leap. In the past, I'd always made smaller incremental leaps. This was, I felt like a leap, it was smaller incremental steps, and this was finally a leap in my business. I even lowered the price point monthly, but I knew if I would do that, it was the right move. I would get more people. And so overall, the revenue increased significantly. So yeah, I'm always looking at how to balance the money side with how much energy, with how generous I can be, with time and with health and family. That's the equation that I'm always working with. And it's taken me a while to come up with business models, and the numbers are important to me. I recently said to my husband, cash is queen. And I don't mean to say I lead with money, meaning like how much I'm going to make, but it has equal importance. But it also has equal importance, my energy and health and what phase of life I'm in and my family. So they all get equal importance, but I don't leave the numbers, money side out.
Coming up, Bari talks about some of her clients' stories, what a body check-in is, and how you can use it. But first, some complexities and common issues that people have surrounding money.
You know, we're all at different points in our lives. We're all at different phases, different ages. We have different work. But most people want to have some kind of creative or more compassionate approach to the relationship to money, and that integrates the practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual. And I've read so many of the money books, and there are a lot of good ones out there. And for me, a lot of them were more traditional and speaking about how you pay down debt, which is so important, right? How you can invest, that can be so important. And just like the standard money management, you know, around increasing income and decreasing expenses, or, you know, and that's all so important. And for me, one of the biggest missing pieces was the emotional piece. I needed the financial literacy side by side with the emotional literacy, because we do project so much onto money. And for many of us, some people I find are very matter of fact about money. They're, you know, and they're even in my community because their spouse or their partner or their mother or their sister is not very matter of fact about money, and they want to understand them. But for most of us, it's filled with emotions and feelings. And so teaching people how to identify, is it anxiety? Is it shame, which most of us have at the beginning? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it, you know, we just want to fall asleep, we check out. Those are just a few. There's guilt, there's joy, there's excitement, there's hope, right? There's an entire range.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/060. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to look up more about Bari or things mentioned in this episode. We're also adding transcripts, so check the website for updates. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Is it time to update your money story? Bari Tessler says yes, and I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to an article that she wrote. If you tune into Inspired Money every week, you know the opening question, what's your earliest childhood memory of money? Have you tried answering that question yourself? Because your money story is your relationship with money, and it's unique to you. It includes the historical facts of your financial life, past, present, and how you're looking into the future. Because money is never really about the money, think about all the thoughts, feelings, beliefs, patterns, and emotions that you have around money. What are your strengths and challenges? Think about the things that are serving you well right now versus the things that aren't. The best thing about your money story is that you have the power to write new chapters anytime you like. So don't feel trapped in an old, outdated, or negative financial identity. While you can look back at history and learn from past mistakes, the key is to figure out what you want your financial future to look like, define it, and then start with small actions that point you in the right direction. Keep focused, keep at it, and you will get there. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. So what's your biggest financial challenge right now? Do you need a financial plan or need help consolidating old 401ks and other accounts? We can help you get financially organized and set up for your future. Email me at awang@runnymede.com, that's RUNNYMEDE.com, or go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. I'd love to hear from you, and we can even do a short call since sometimes it's just easier to talk money. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong.
Do you spend the 12 months of the program, you go through money healing, money practices, and money maps?
Yes. Okay. So that's the framework for the methodology. That's the framework that's in my book. That's the framework of the year-long program. And in the year-long program, we do 4 months of money healing, 4 months of money practices, and 4 months of money maps. They get access to that material forever. They can keep coming back to it. And the community part is that there's this Facebook group. I'm in there a lot. And then there's just an entire member area with all the content and a huge library of all the interviews I've ever done. But I'm taking them through step by step all the content that's in the book. We're just doing it more thoroughly with a lot more hand-holding and access to me and my team. And that's a little bit of what's going on in there.
I love how your business is always evolving and how you're always listening and reacting. I think that many of us, we often think that our money problems will be solved when or by making more money. It's like, oh, well, when I make more, I won't have to worry. Or when I make more, this problem will go away. Since you work with so many diverse students, what do you see? What have you learned?
So there's never going to be an amount for most people, that they arrive at where they feel like, oh, I'm done. I feel secure. All is well, because it doesn't ever really come from a dollar amount. And that surprises a lot of people. It's really, how do you find true security? And how do you find safety? And what does that even mean to you? So a few stories. I worked with a woman, and some of my high earners, that's their thing, just make more. They're so good at it. Where I have other people that just earning, I can talk about them in a moment. It's hard. It's hard. But high earners, they just make more, and they don't want to deal with the nitty gritty. They don't want to look at their bookkeeping. They don't want to look at their numbers. They just want to keep making more because that feels good. Some of them are in real estate. Some of them are high-end consultants. But at some point, they do need to realize that they need to slow down, because I've seen even many of them who are overspending, or they're not saving. They're not slowing down enough. They just keep saying, I'm going to make more money, and that's going to take care of it. But there's many parts to having a relationship to money and to managing our money. And earning is one of them, and it's really important. But the other piece is like slowing down, looking at your numbers, looking at your cash flow, seeing what phase of life are you in, what are your priorities at this time. So this one high earner that I'm thinking of, it took her until her 40s to actually sit down and say, what is it going to take for her to start saving? And her priority was her tiny little 2 kids and their college. That was like what got her to feel connected, committed, and to start to actually take action to save and not spend all of her money and not just keep throwing more money at it, as though that's going to solve it. I've known many high earners that just were overspending for all sorts of reasons. They felt they deserved to, and that could come from childhood where needs weren't met. It could come from so many different things, right? So making more money is a good skill set to have, but that's one piece of it. It needs to also be met with who's doing your numbers. A lot of people just throw their bookkeeping to a bookkeeper, and I do think even if it's just for 3 months, 6 months, it's so helpful, even my high earners, to learn how to navigate a bookkeeping system, to learn how to read the reports. It's their life. It's their goals, right? It's their money that's moving around. And then from there, you can start to direct it more. But that's when you start getting into values and priorities. And another high earner, she was working in corporate accounting. And I would say, even though she was a high earner, the amount of hours that she was working scared me and started to put her in the under-earning category just in my mind, as though the amount of time and energy and overtime doesn't feel healthy for her, right? But she knows how to budget. She knows how to do projections for $1 million companies or $1 million budgets, but for her own self, she was just overspending on things that she really didn't need and wasn't even enjoying. And it wasn't until I sat down with her and we started, I always like to come up with creative exercises to help people make this area of life more playful and more meaningful. And so sometimes I have people sit down and list out their values and then have them rename their income categories or the expense categories. And for this one woman, that was what connected the dots for her was, oh, she's spending and overspending, and it's not really in alignment with her values, and she's not enjoying her spending decisions. And that's how she started to be able to learn how to direct her money better. So she had enough money, she needed to learn how to direct it better. And that allowed her to feel as though she could enjoy the money that she was earning. She wasn't just spending it all. She was not just, or paying for debt. She was starting to honor past, present, and future, One last little story is someone came to me and decided early on that financial freedom was important to her. Now, financial freedom could be defined so differently for all of us, right? For me, it's having work that I love, where I'm serving a whole community. I'm making a very good living. I'm able to have a nice lifestyle and give in ways that I want to give, and to create a legacy, which is the next business model phase that I'm working on right now. But for this woman, that was not her definition of financial freedom at all. Her definition was to make enough money so that she didn't have to work. And so she invested in real estate in her 20s and did well. So this was after the recession. It was more recently. And so she doesn't have to work, but she still does work. But what was happening for her? She was still having a tremendous amount of anxiety, even though that her real estate investments were doing well. They had a lot of money, in cash flow, a lot of money in investments. So the anxiety for her was more about going out, like, what is enough? Does she have enough? She still feels like she doesn't have enough, And she was having anxiety about going out for dinner with friends. Is everyone going to assume she's going to pay? Should she? Just because, and on and on and on. And we sat, and I just talked about checking in with your body, doing a body check-in, which is the antidote to money shame, or the antidote to money anxiety. It's really just learning how to work with whatever emotions are there. It's a whole chapter in my book.
Yeah, you say that one of your favorite tools is the body check-in, especially for making money decisions. Can you tell our listener how that's helped you and how they can learn to do it?
Sure. I'll tell a story, but I'll finish the story just of this woman that for her, I was saying to her, what are your emotions? And she was like, oh, I'm ignoring my emotions. I don't even want to name them. And I said, okay, well, your anxiety is not going to go away, right? And you're not suddenly going to wake up and realize you feel you have enough money. You need to work on all the money stories and emotions that are coming up around this, and then from there, as you understand yourself better, then you can start defining, what does money success mean to you? And are you spending and giving in according to your values, and on and on. But that was that woman she's hit, plenty of money, right? So that's her, okay?
Yes, I can clearly see how having a psychotherapist in your money corner can benefit somebody, because it's more than just looking at a spreadsheet.
It's more than that, and so much else comes up. If you have money, people will ask you if they can borrow some or if they can have some. How do you navigate that? How do you work with that? Do you want to hide it? There's so much, I'm not saying it's not nice to have a lot of money. It is. It comes with its own challenges as well, right? You have your gifts and your challenges. So let me tell you a story about how I use the body check-in in a money buying decision-making mode, okay? So this was about 5 years ago. My husband we were back to one car. We're in Boulder, Colorado. Everything is within 15 minutes drive. I was driving the car, the Prius. My husband was on his bike in the winter. And it was starting to feel challenging for him, and he was wanting a second car. And so he kept talking to me about getting an electric Leaf. It had been a dream since he was a kid. And I was kind of holding on to one car. I know that's not fair, but that's what, I was thinking. And he's over there, very cold in the winter, riding his bike around. So one day, it's a family weekend. My son was 3 or 4 years old. We go to a cafe. They were having a party with goats, live goats. And next to this cafe, they had a used green car dealership. And there were 4 electric Leaf cars, and the exact kind my husband wanted, the exact color, But he had been looking at pricing and finance charges, and he'd been doing that work for a while. So he walks over to the car dealership, and he comes back and he says, hey, honey, you want to take a test drive? And I'm like, okay, see what's going on. But I say yes. We take a test drive. It's lovely. We get back to the car dealer, and all of a sudden, we quickly start talking prices and finance charges and all that. And I just noticed that I'm starting to hyperventilate. And now that may seem silly. I've been a financial therapist for years, so I shouldn't have any emotions, right? But I don't believe that. I don't believe that our emotions go away. I believe that we can learn how to work with them, catch them quicker, learn how to sit with them, feel them, learn how to be with them so that they don't overwhelm us. And so in that moment, I caught myself starting to hyperventilate. And for some reason at that time, buying a car was a mid-price purchase that still scared me. Now, 4 years later, when we went to buy a home for the first time, I was not scared at all. And I was like a Jaguar, and we made the whole decision, and it happened and closed in 36 hours, But this was a precursor to that. And I needed to go through this to be able to feel more comfortable in the large purchase, of a home and with a mortgage, which I'd never wanted until I was ready. And so I'm recognizing I'm hyperventilating, and I say to my husband, honey, I need to go to the bathroom to do a body check-in. And he knows all my lingo, around this. And I go to the bathroom because the bathroom is always a great place to do a body check-in. And I'm in the bathroom stall, just like checking in. What am I feeling? What am I noticing? What is my breathing doing? What's going on? And I was able to do that process pretty quickly. Now, when I first learned this in my 20s, was I able to calm myself down? No. Did I still feel scared or overwhelmed? Sure. A body check-in is checking in with your body on a physical level. Are your legs crossed? Are they open? Are your shoulders up? Are they down? Is your jaw loose or tight? On a sensation level, any sensations in your body? On an emotional level, what's the emotion? Or I don't want to say cocktail of emotions, but a constellation of emotions that are coming up. And then also, where's your breathing in your body? So how deep, how shallow, where in your belly, in your chest, your throat. So I check in with my body on a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, and breathing level. Okay. And then, from there, after I get a handle on what's the emotion, what's going on, then I can get a little more practical and say, well, what do I need to do now? And I knew that I just needed to go, I did calm myself down in the body check-in in the bathroom. And I said, okay, I just need to go back in there and tell my husband we need to have a 20 to 30 minute money date right here in the car dealership, And we told the car dealer guy, you can sit here, but we need to have a chat. And then we just proceeded to go through a series of questions that we've developed for, we have questions around small purchases or medium purchases or large purchases, and we asked our questions. So do we have the cash flow for this? Yes. Is this decision to buy this Leaf car in alignment with our values? Yes. It's an electric car. There's no gasoline, right? It's the lowest carbon footprint car that there is at the time. Is this going to impact our future goal at that, of buying a home? Or we went through a series of questions. But if I had not done that body check-in, I wouldn't have been ready or prepared or able to sit down with my husband to have a money date where we asked more practical questions. And then we came back to the car dealer, talked about the numbers again, finance charge. We made the decision. Yes, we drove off the lot, like cheering. And then afterwards we evaluate, was this a good decision? Are we enjoying this car? Would we do it again? And on and on. And afterwards, there's body check-ins too. So body check-ins can happen before a money decision, in the midst of one, after one as a debriefing. A body check-in can happen as you're about to have a money conversation with your spouse, your parents, your children, your clients, before, during, in the heat of the moment, or after to debrief, and on and on. So for me, a body check-in, again, is one of the tools, but I don't leave it out. And it's an essential tool that goes along with more of the concrete, practical questions that I love to ask in a money date or when we're making a good or attempting to make a good money decision as well.
I love that. Is the body check-in really trying to ensure that you're taking the time, and then in essence, it's aligning your thoughts, sort of gut and intuition and emotions all together?
Eventually, yes. But we've been taught so much to ignore our body's messages, to override it. It takes some time. This is what I spent an entire decade training in, the somatic psychology. That's, and so at the beginning, it's just, can I even stay in my body? Can I even tolerate this feeling of anger? Can I even tolerate this sensation of anxiety or fear or joy even, So at the beginning, it's just learning to even identify what is the money emotion. I'm also just trying to help you bring more awareness to this area of life, which then leads to understanding eventually, and then eventually leads to changing a pattern or shifting a pattern. But also, this is a practice. It's not like you do a body check-in once and you're done. It is do it every day. When you go online to check your numbers, when you're going to the mailbox to get your bills, every day there's money interactions. And so it's a practice that is also teaching you to understand yourself better in this area. A lot of us say, oh, I know myself well. I just don't want to deal with this. I want to stick my head in the sand, or I have so much anxiety, or I hate this area of life. Okay, that's the beginning. Let's go deeper into, what is the money story here, and where did it come from? And I do go back to the past to learn from family of origin and our history and our lineage. I won't stay there forever, but I do go back there to help us understand more of what made up our money story and some of our choices and decisions and mistakes. We all have them. And then we all get to, at some point, create a different financial identity or say, I learned this from my mom and it was great, or I learned what not to do for my mom and this, and to put it all together and to create new pathways. So it is what you're saying. It is to calm ourselves down. It's learning how to listen again to our body, which certainly connects with intuition. A lot of people don't realize that intuition is so important in money as well, even though I love the practical parts as well. But so many of us think, well, we don't know how to do this, or we're stupid, or no, we need to move past a lot of stories. And then each of us have, in a couple, even if the one person comes from a financial background and the other person thinks, I don't know anything about money, it's not true. We just need to find out, what's a good bookkeeping system for you? It may not be Excel spreadsheets. You may hate that. So, and to learn how to go about it in a different way. So it's, the body check-in is many things, but it's something to be practiced. It's to help us bring awareness, to learn more about our money stories and our history, and certainly to help us connect within the moment, what feels right, what's going on with our intuition here, but then also always connect it with the numbers. It's like body, heart, mind. I like to connect them all. I don't like to make decisions without the other.
I love it. Trust your body, and really it's about awareness, because that's going to open the doors to addressing issues, addressing problems, solving issues, solving problems. And hopefully that simplifies things so that it's not so complex or overwhelming in the moment. Now, Bari, I love to ask all of our guests, how do you define success?
So how do I define success? For me, when I mentioned that finding out who I am and who I'm not, and creating good work that I can offer a community and serve a community where I can create a nice livelihood that honors money, time, energy, my family, and health, and something that I can keep growing and that I can continue to be interested in and love. Every year my husband's like, wow, there are new threads or new interviews that you're doing with people, like money in the Enneagram or money in couples. Of course, that's been going on for years. Or how do you find these new topics? And I'm like, it's just never ending, Yeah, I think that's it. And for me, my family is so important, and health is really big, but creating good work in the world that I can serve. And I'm starting, as I mentioned, to look at longer term legacy. And we've been working on giving and donating a lot more in the last few years, which is something that we had to stop doing when our son first came. It's not a very direct answer, but all that I just said, that's my definition of success as a human, my relationships, my family, community, and giving something back that feels so in alignment with you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it has that element of doing something bigger than yourself, because the community is so important. Do you have one inspired money tip that you can share that's had a big impact in your life?
Normally when people ask me for one, I say the body check-in number one. start practicing it. Number 2, choose a bookkeeping system, learn a tracking system. But in this moment, what's coming to me is keep finding the right support team. That feels really important to me. I just brought on a CFO that started 3 weeks ago. So for the last 2 weeks, I start out my Monday. So every Monday at 10 o'clock, I go to my chiropractor, my new one. And that is so wonderful. I kind of feel naturally high. And then I end my week on Friday at 10 o'clock with a meeting with my new CFO. He's on retainer. He has other clients like me. And I realized I needed a new person in my financial support team because we were audited this year and it went relatively really well. I'm sure that's a whole other story that I'm like teasing you about that we can talk about another moment. And I learned so much from. I was audited 16 years ago, and it was a cute little audit, one of my first years in business. And, it was like a 3-hour audit in the office. This was 5 months of sending in documentation over and over and over, which we had everything, which I'm very proud of. But at the end of that audit, I realized I'm hitting a ceiling again. I'm hitting kind of a money ceiling, but I'm hitting a ceiling of I've been the one to help us plan through the numbers and vision and goals, what's next, but I really want to step into more legacy, and I need someone else to help me do this. And so this is my tip, is when you're feeling really, really stuck, see if you can name what you think you need and send a little note to the people closest to you and see what referral or resource you get back. And you'll know. I knew right away, this is my guy. And I'm so excited. And we started a few weeks, and I was starting to feel a teeny bit hopeless. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get and I haven't felt that way in 6 or 7 years, in my new business model. And as soon as I sent out the email to friends and team and got back this one person and got others, but I knew it was him. And so find the right support person for yourself. Yeah.
Oh, that's great advice. Well, thank you, Bari. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and perspective on how people can improve their relationship with money. Where can the inspired listener follow you and learn more about the art of money?
A few places. So the main place is my website, which is my name, BariTessler.com, and that's BariTessler.com. You can join our community, and you'll get a 7-day mini Art of Money course via email. I have a big blog with lots of articles. I have a podcast. I have my book, The Art of Money, a life-changing guide to financial happiness. You can get it tons of local independent stores and Barnes & Noble and Amazon around the world. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Those are my 2 favorite places on social media.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bari.
Thank you so much.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? Did you have one? While I like the recurring theme on this show of finding your passion and purpose, Bari reminds us that money deserves to be among your priorities. That includes energy, family, and health. It's okay to make an effort to make your purpose and passion profitable too. If you're helping people, you've got to make it sustainable. If you had a different favorite inspired money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Let's continue the conversation there. All the music on today's show is by Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. If you enjoy this show, please tell a friend. It helps more people to find the Inspired Money podcast and helps to grow our community. Together, let's make the world a better place. Thank you for tuning in. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you.